Okay, here's a question. When we read about a legendary hero, is their biggest achievement really mastering magic? Or is it maybe mastering their own story, their own myth?
Ah, that's the question with Patrick Rothfuss's The Name of the Wind, isn't it? Kvothe. I mean, his primary skill might just be spinning his own legend. He tells us how amazing he is, and we, as readers, constantly have to decide, do we buy it?
Right. And we think that whole dynamic is worth digging into. So enjoy this bold new take on book coverage. It's an extended analysis. It's more than just a summary, though we do include that too.
Yeah, we're looking at how Rothfuss actually shapes his arguments, how he builds influence with you, the reader, and how he earns or maybe loses your trust.
Exactly. It should give you some tools to read with, well, sharper insight, maybe greater discernment. Thinking about reading the book, this should definitely help.
And it's great stuff for aspiring writers, too, seeing how these techniques work.
Definitely. And hey, if you find this longer format useful, please let us know. Your feedback really does help us figure out what kind of content to make next.
Oh, and just a heads up, you are experiencing a unique two-host AI conversation here. It's powered by Google's NotebookLM, which lets us do this deeper, more dynamic kind of book analysis.
We're drawing on a pretty comprehensive framework to really dissect Rothfuss's writing moves, the story's emotional punch, and those strategic appeals he makes to the reader.
So the book itself, it's this really dynamic, intricate fantasy story. The quick summary, Rothfuss uses his own academic background, you can feel that, to guide Kvothe through this incredibly complex journey, from like utter tragedy to becoming this legend.
And often Kvothe's telling his story is a central part of the conflict itself.
That framing is so important. The main audience, sure, it's fans of epic fantasy, people who like that big, sprawling feel. But the themes, loss, ambition, figuring out who you are, those are universal. They pull in a much wider readership.
Rothfuss isn't just trying to tell a good yarn here. He's really pushing us to think about stories themselves, about their power, and he uses a classic technique to do it.
Yeah.
The frame narrative.
Exactly. So you've got present-day Kvothe, right? The quiet innkeeper telling his life story to the chronicler. That sets up this dual timeline. You're constantly jumping back with flashbacks, but then you get these little breaks, sometimes in third person, back in the present.
And it's fascinating how that structure messes with you, the reader. On one hand, you get totally immersed. You're right there with young Kvothe, hiding in the university archives or fighting off bullies.
Immersion, yeah.
But at the same time, it creates this critical distance. Because the guy telling the story, the innkeeper, isn't quite the legend he's describing. It plants that seed of doubt right away. It makes you question.
And the world building supports this complex feeling. I mean, Rothfuss's descriptions are so rich, so detailed. People compare him to Tolkien, and you see it. The world feels both magical, the fae, the Chandrian mystery, and also really, really grounded, especially the university.
That grounded feeling is so important when we start talking about credibility, about Kvothe himself. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about ethos, the rhetoric of credibility.
Okay, yeah, because this, I think, is where the book gets really clever. Kvothe seems like your classic fantasy hero archetype, right? The brilliant orphan prodigy. But Rothfuss immediately starts messing with that.
How so?
Well, we get the story directly from Kvothe. It's his version. So his talents, sure, they shine through. But his flaws, they're also revealed through that same narration. Sometimes it feels, well, self-serving.
Rothfuss definitely works hard to build Kvothe's credibility, his ethos. You see it in the legends that people whisper about him before he even tells his story. You see it in what townsfolk say.
Testimonials, basically.
Yeah, and most clearly you see it when he just does something amazing, playing that perfect song at the Aeolian or pulling off some ridiculously complex sympathy magic when everything's going wrong. Those moments feel real.
That's the building up of his ethos, absolutely. And here's the really crucial part. The whole structure of the narrative is designed to chip away at that same credibility.
The frame story again.
Exactly. In the present-day timeline, Kvothe struggles with simple things. He can barely handle a sword fight that breaks out in his own inn. He seems broken.
So you're constantly comparing the glorious deeds he's describing from the past versus this tired man sitting across from the chronicler.
It forces you, the reader, into an active role. You have to ask, is this guy telling the truth, the whole truth? Or is this his last greatest performance crafting his own legacy?
It really changes how you read it. You're not just passively listening to a story. You're like judging a witness on the stand.
And if we lean into that idea that he is manipulating us maybe just a little, why do we keep reading? Why do we still root for him? That has to be about the emotional connection, right? pathos.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The emotional core is incredibly powerful. It all stems from that devastating loss early on when his whole troop is murdered. It leaves him completely alone, starving on the streets of Tarbean.
That orphan backstory, that deep need for belonging,
Yeah.
it's a powerful hook for empathy. You feel for the kid.
And when we talk pathos, the emotional appeal, it's not just the huge tragedies. It's the smaller struggles too, isn't it?
Definitely. It's him being hungry, his awkwardness and vulnerability when it comes to Denna, and then the pure, fierce joy he finds in small wins. Rothfuss uses really vivid imagery and Kvothe's internal thoughts to pull you in. You feel the despair, but you also feel the triumphs, the little moments of connection.
I remember that moment when he finally scrapes together enough money to get into the university. It feels like such a huge victory after everything he went through in Tarbean.
Yeah.
That kind of payoff really connects you to him.
It absolutely locks you in. But what's interesting is how that strong emotional pull is balanced by something else, an appeal to our intellect, to logic, what we call logos.
Right, the logical framework. Rothfuss is clearly an intellectual writer, and you see that especially in how he designs the magic systems.
Yes. Sympathy, the main magic system Kvothe learns. It's not just waving your hands and chanting. It has rules, strict ones, based on things like energy transfer, thermodynamics, physical links. It feels almost like a science.
Which is a huge appeal to logos. It makes the magic feel plausible within its own rules, not just arbitrary plot magic.
It makes it feel more like physics than just magic. And the logic doesn't stop there. You also have the other system, naming, which isn't about equations. It's about deep, almost philosophical understanding of the true nature of things.
And the tension between those two kinds of logic, the sort of empirical logic of sympathy and the deeper intuitive logic of naming that drives so much of Kvothe's time at the university.
It gives the book real intellectual weight. You're not just watching him overcome obstacles. You're trying to figure out the rules he's using, the logic behind his actions. It engages your brain.
Speaking of engaging your rational mind, I just wanted to mention that this analysis is brought to you by Mindful Moments. That's our YouTube channel. We offer AI book analysis, summaries, critiques, all aimed at inspiring reflection and rational thought.
A perfect fit for a book that demands so much thinking from its readers.
Okay, so let's dig a bit deeper into the writing itself. Beyond those big appeals, ethos, pathos, logos, what specific techniques is Rothfuss using on the page?
Well, we've talked about the frame story and how the shifting perspectives create irony. Stylistically, though, his language is really varied. The word choice, the sentence structures, they change depending on the mood or scene.
He uses a lot of metaphors, too. And repetition.
Yes, meaningful repetition, both of images and ideas like that broken clay pot keeps coming back, but also in the language itself. It gives the prose a certain rhythm.
And he weaves in all these hints of deeper folklore and mythology. The Chandrian, the Fae. It makes the world feel ancient, like there's this huge history just beneath the surface that we're only getting glimpses of. We, the readers, are trying to piece it together.
Structure-wise, things like the story within a story setup and even just where he chooses to end chapters, those are deliberate choices. They control the pacing, often leaving you on a small cliffhanger or emphasizing an emotional beat, keeps you turning the pages even during the quieter university sections.
Now, with all this praise for the technique and the immersion, we do have to touch on the criticisms. Does Rothfuss maybe lean too heavily on the intellectual side sometimes? What are the recognized weaknesses or limitations?
Well, some critics do point out that the pattern of Kvothe's story can feel a bit repetitive. You know, he's brilliant, he succeeds wildly, then he makes a big mistake, gets punished, climbs back up, repeat.
Right. That cycle can sometimes feel like it slows things down, especially when we're waiting for answers about the bigger mysteries, like the Chandrian.
Another area that always sparks a lot of debate is the portrayal of some supporting characters, especially the female characters like Denna. There are ongoing discussions about their agency and how they function within Kvothe's narrative.
These are definitely points of controversy.
But what's interesting is that even these debated points often feel like they might be part of the strategy. The ambiguity is key. The fact that we're never 100% sure about Kvothe's reliability.
That central mystery.
Yeah. And the big unanswered questions, who are the Chandrian, really? What's the deal with Denna's mysterious patron? These loose ends aren't necessarily flaws. They're deliberate choices to keep you thinking, keep you talking about the book long after you finished it.
They keep the conversation going for years, literally.
So when you pull it all together, the complexity, the layers, it makes The Name of the Wind this really effective exploration of myth-making itself, how identities are built, how stories shape reality. It works, even while, yeah, it leans on some familiar fantasy tropes, and the way it handles certain characters definitely attracts both strong praise and sharp criticism.
So here's the final thought then. If the whole story fundamentally turns on the act of storytelling, if Kvothe is basically building his own legend right in front of us, word by careful word, how does that change our job as readers? What's our responsibility in figuring out the truth of his story?
It means you can't just sit back and accept it all, right? You have to be engaged, constantly weighing the evidence. You become a judge, in a way, not just a passive audience member. It's a choice you're making with every page you turn.
Click the link on screen for the in-depth book summary. And hey, subscribe, share, maybe purchase the book via the link. And always, think rationally.
See the many genre-based book analyses at Mindful Moments. Subscribe and nourish your mind on the go.